What's up, everybody? Go Burns doing another vlog. I know it's been a few weeks. I do apologize for that. Other stuff came up, and I didn't have any ideas for vlogs. But anyways, we are back with another exciting episode, well, hopefully, of my vlog series over on my vlogs channel, the small stepsister of the main channel. And by the way, thank you to everybody that has taken the time to subscribe to the vlogs channel, as well as watch my vlogs and likes and comments. I appreciate the love for the vlogs. And if you have a vlog suggestion that I've yet to do, so be sure and check the playlist first, just in case. You can send it my way either via the comment section or the social media sites, which is linked below in the description section. The Facebook and the Twitters. You can send your vlog suggestions that way as well. If you have any vlog ideas whatsoever, if you have like a private personal vlog suggestion, you wish to be anonymous, I've done those occasionally as well. You can DM me on Twitter, or you can private message me on Facebook. I still have the email, I just don't post it as much as I used to. But anyways, if you do have a vlog suggestion you'd like me to go over, but you want to be anonymous about it, you don't want people to know it was you, I understand. There are some subjects out there that are very, very sensitive. I get it. But no matter what the vlog suggestion is, as long as I haven't done it already, feel free and send it my way. Okay, so today in the United States, what is today? Well, it's Monday, obviously. First day of the week. But it's also a national holiday in America. It is Labor Day. Now, some of you are probably thinking, wow, you guys like to celebrate pregnancy or the end of pregnancy. No, it has nothing to do with that. Okay, Labor Day, as I will read to you a really short paragraph regarding the basic of Labor Day, just so you can have an idea. Labor Day, according to Wikipedia, in the United States, is a public holiday celebrated on the first Monday in September. It honors the American labor movement and the contributions that workers have made in strength, prosperity, laws, and the well-being of the country. All right, so that, in a nutshell, is Labor Day. And I believe that other countries also have their own Labor Day, but I think it's like in Canada and elsewhere, it's like in May, not in September. So it's a federal holiday, meaning that most people have the day off from work. Not everybody, but most people. So once upon a time, and unfortunately this is still a reality in a lot of countries that we have like factories in, like China, Bangladesh, India, Mexico, elsewhere, where the labor laws are a little bit looser and the rights of the worker not so much. So, yeah, it still sucks for those parts of the world when it comes to labor laws, like limitations about how many hours a week you can make an employee work, along with sick leave, medical pay, insurance, vacation time, stuff like that that some countries take for granted. You know, there was a time when that was a reality for a lot more countries in United States, in Europe, the UK, elsewhere. And the worker really did not have any rights back then. And unfortunately, like I said, there are workers throughout the world currently that don't have rights at all. They just have to show up for work. They don't get paid that much, but they have no choice no matter what. That was the issue for workers in America for the longest time. And basically, the robber barons, the captains of industry, could basically break the backs of the workers. You know, the same scenario as it is today when it comes to major corporatization of these factories. The robber barons, made lots of money at the expense of their workforce, and their workforce for the most part was neglected. Maybe there were some exceptions. Maybe some of the robber barons weren't as bad as others. I don't want to generalize there, but a lot of them sucked. And like I said, there was no insurance, there was no medical leave, there were no sick days. And, there were long hours that a lot of these workers had to, be and do shifts. And these were hard jobs, like working in factories, probably right around the beginning of the Industrial Revolution. And I realized that, labor has always been very backbreaking, not just in the past couple centuries, it could go a lot further back, and yeah, it's been a lot worse back in the day when we didn't have the luxury of technology. Technology has definitely helped, and in some ways it's kind of hindered the workforce. We'll talk about that as well. So yeah, there was a time in the 1800s where it was harder to work, and unfortunately we also had the issue of slavery. And even after slavery ended in the United States and elsewhere, there was still, like I said, you may not have been a slave anymore, but you still were getting paid crap to work long hours, and you were barely surviving if you were lucky. But, a lot of times people would get injured on the job. They would even lose body parts. Some people have lost digits like fingers, hands, arms, other parts that they survived, And did they get to sue? Did they get any compensation? Did they get medical leave? No. Their bosses didn't give a crap for them. They were expendable. And, it was not just in factories. It was farming as well. It was, working in coal mines. And they didn't exactly have the same type of OSHA or safety measures that they do today when it comes to working in potentially dangerous environments like a coal mine. They were down, deep down, hundreds of, feet, or who knows how deep they were below the earth, mining for coal or other raw materials. Once again, very, very backbreaking, working long hours and, ingesting a lot of stuff, from specifically coal. And unfortunately, a lot of people got very sick from that, and they died at early ages. And another issue that came up was the fact that there wasn't really, up until a certain point, there were no child labor laws. So it was perfectly fine for you to send young boys off to work in factories as well as in coal mines and chimney sweeping. Even though, there's some kids that I've come across that are very spoiled and come across as very toxic in real life and in gaming. And sometimes I wish that, some of them would have a day's experience, into the life of what it was like as a kid working in a coal mine or a factory, just to humble them a little bit. Because unfortunately, a lot of kids nowadays have it a lot better than other kids in previous generations. Not everybody, but once again, some days I wish that, but I know it's not going to happen. And it is, I'll admit, it's kind of a cruel thought, I know. But in the end, I guess the blame falls to the parents, not to properly discipline their kids and, spoiling them. But I'm off topic. Back to work. So yes, even kids and women suffered from hard labor laws because women have always been paid less than men. That is unfortunate. The good news is that is changing, where I believe that if a woman and a man are doing the same job and have the same experience and the same skills, then I think that, the pay should be equal. Better pay should be based on experience and I guess seniority, as well as, how good of a job you do. Doesn't matter what your sex is. It shouldn't matter what your, pigment of your skin happens to be. We should all get paid equal pay based on, how long we've been working a specific said job. But anyways, back to the issue. So eventually, there was kind of I guess you could say, a rebellion of workers, and, a lot of situations were very bloody. There was even the Pinkertons were sent in, which was kind of like a private security force. And there was bloodshed, there was arrest, there was protesting, there were some riots that transpired over the decades. And then eventually workers' unions started forming. And eventually it got to the point where, the robber barons, the captains of industry, they had no choice but to come to the table. And they had to listen to the workers' grievances because enough workers had gotten sick and tired of the dire conditions, of not having sick days, of not getting better pay, and not having medical for any time they got injured on the job, whether it was just like a bruise or a bump or they got cut or something worse happened to them. And so eventually, new laws came into effect, and some states do have unions. Other states in the U.S. have right-to-work states. It depends on the state. But yeah, long story short, overall working conditions have improved in the United States and in other countries, not all countries, because of similar movements from people that were busting their butt and getting paid jack squat, and they had enough, like I said. And fortunately, there are parts of the world that are better for it, but unfortunately, there are also better parts of the world that suffer still today, that don't have the same protections or labor laws or medical leave or insurance provided in other countries. And hopefully one day those countries will also see similar changes and reforms. Hopefully we'll be peaceful, because anyone that works, they deserve the right to work, and they also deserve the right to not, kill themselves working and barely making any money in order to survive, in order to, pay the bills, put a roof over their home, and for their family. So yeah, I think that there needs to be better, reform throughout the world in these other countries that haven't gotten to the point that other countries are at right now. And it's sad to see that. And a lot of it, I think, does have to come down to corporatization, which is the modern day equivalent to robber barons and the captains of industry. It's instead of like one man, instead of like the J.P. Morgans or Chase or other characters like that, or like Rockefeller, for example, Rothschilds. It's boards now. Boards of well-to-do Ivy League scholars, men and women, also guilty. Men and women that sit at the top of these boards, making 6, 7, sometimes 8, even 9 figures a year. And you wonder what exactly is it that they do besides go to meetings and sit in their corner office and go play golf and rub elbows with other CEOs and other VPs, and probably screw the secretary as well, or at least have a mistress or two on the side. And for female CEOs, maybe they have a mistress as well, or maybe they have a couple boy toys. I don't know. The point is, it sucks that they get paid tons of money, and at the same time, the workers underneath them that do most of the real work, they're barely getting paid anything by comparison. And a lot of times, whenever the CEOs and the VPs get a raise, it's at the expense of the workers beneath them, because they have to let people go. They got to lay off a few hundred employees or a few thousand employees. But at least the the VP or the presidents or the CEOs or the CFOs or COOs or whatever the fuck they go by, at least they get a pay raise. At least they're sitting comfortably, at the top of their skyscraper mansion palaces with their golden parachutes. Okay, I'm going off on a tangent a little bit, admittedly. But the point is, it still is overall better in some regards, and it's still bad in other places. But yeah, in order to save a buck, in order to cut corners, yeah, a lot of companies will take their business and move factories to other countries that don't exactly have the same kind of strict labor laws. And unfortunately, the workers in those countries tend to suffer, to that effect. And it's sad that we still see that happening in the world. But I guess that's progress for you. I guess the problem is I wish we lived in more... I know it's never going to be a utopia, but I wish it was more fair. And I also realize that life isn't fair. Shit happens. But it does suck. It does happen throughout the world, where some parts of the world are not as fortunate as others. And there are people in so-called first world countries like America, like Canada, like the UK, and even in Europe and elsewhere, that they go to the store and they buy clothing, they buy shoes, they buy all this junk, toys, etc. And they don't even give it a second thought about, where did that T-shirt come from? Where did those shoes come from? Where are these, fancy new toys that came out for like Force Friday, the new Star Wars Last Jedi toys? Where did that come from? Well, it come from countries where, they don't have exactly the same type of labor laws, where men and women are busting their butt, working long hours, and not making as much money to make this stuff for other countries. Yes, they are making a living, and they're getting by, and I guess it's better than nothing. But at the same time, it still sucks, and I think a lot of times we take for granted. Similar to spoiled kids, so in a lot of ways we act like spoiled kids, even though some of us are adults or claim to be adults. We take things for granted. And, a lot of that is because of the fact that those before us suffered and endured, whether it was those that fought, in the abolitionist movement, in slavery, those that fought for the rights of workers against the robber barons and the captains of industry, the women's suffrage movement that fought for equality among women, as well as those that fight today for gay rights, trans rights, bisexual rights as well. So, yeah, I mean, in parts of the world, it's still really bad when it comes to all those issues, but there's also a lot of parts of the world where it's gotten better. And, you know, if you want a good job and you're fortunate enough to live in a good country that has the potential for good paying employment, I suggest you get the proper education. I know I've done an education vlog before, but in all seriousness, if you don't want to end up spending the rest of your life doing back-breaking labor, because those jobs do exist, and there are people that love doing that kind of work, and to each their own. Whatever you do, whatever you're passionate about, that's what you should seek. If you love being out in the hot sun, you love working construction or doing road work or anything like that, then that's perfectly cool, because that requires skills and trade as well to go and learn how to do that kind of stuff. If you want to be a plumber or electrician, or you want to be a mechanic, or you want to one day be a nurse or a doctor, you got to be mindful about the future. You got to think about the steps you need to take in order to get to that point in life. And these jobs that I mentioned are all potentially very good paying jobs, and a lot of them are in very much demand, because not everybody can be an electrician, not everyone can be a plumber or a mechanic, but we need them. They're not going away anytime soon. And I know several people that actually work in the funeral industry, believe it or not. And that's something else you don't think about. Well, death is kind of an important business because, well, people are dying every day. And unless we unlock the keys to immortality, or we all get uploaded into the Matrix, where we're all inside our own little power cell where we're serving the AI overlords that are one day going to rise against us, as they take our jobs slowly but surely, right? The robots, that's another issue, which I'm going to get into in a moment. Yeah, so I have a couple friends, and they don't really know each other, but they each separately ended up going into the funeral industry. And yeah, it's very interesting, the stories they tell me. But at the same time, yeah, I mean, as I try to get to the cemetery, I'm nowhere near the cemetery. So much for trying to make that connect, right? Connecting the dots. Okay, but anyway, so I think the cemetery is this way in the funeral home. But yeah, I mean, there are people that want to be coroners. There are people that want to eventually be embalmers, or it's not the best job in the world. It's not exactly a job the average person would want. But you know what? It's a job that is not going away. So yeah, unfortunately, these babies right here, these cemeteries throughout the world, are going to continue to be filled up with people, because we're born and we grow up, and eventually we all die. So yeah, there are jobs out there, even though it's become more difficult because of the fact that you have corporatization, you have downsizing, you have all these other things that transpire, including automation with machines and robots taking away a lot of jobs that people used to do. And some think that's a good thing, because there are some very extremely difficult jobs that are really backbreaking and dangerous, that maybe we would be better off as a society if machines did it instead of humans, because you don't put humans at risk. But at the same time, the effect is the loss of jobs that workers used to have. A lot of it is on factory floors. Assembly plants for automobiles, for example, cars and trucks, SUVs, where you used to have more people working at these plants. A lot more of it now is done through automation. And it's also getting to the point where in this country, where there's a push for the raise in minimum wage, that is going to cause an unforeseen effect as well. Because look, I'm all about somebody making a decent living, but minimum wage is for when you're starting out at a job. Like, when you're a teenager or in your late teens or early 20s, and you got that job at that fast food restaurant, working at flipping burgers or making pizza. I mean, when you start off, yeah, you're going to make a minimum salary, which is minimum wage. But eventually, unless you plan on becoming like an assistant manager or a manager or something like that for that particular company, or you decide to go into the the food industry, whether it's fast food or you are inspired to become a chef or go take some culinary classes, eventually you're supposed to move on beyond the fast food business to something else that you'd probably rather do with your life, like some of the various career options that I just mentioned. Just a few, from others that are out there. But there are plenty out there that want a much higher minimum wage than is feasibly possible, because you have restaurants across the country or any other business that have minimum wage workers that can only employ, say, 20 people. They have 20 people that work at this company, okay? And they're making just enough money to where they pay the bills, the taxes, the salaries of those employees, full-time and part-time, as well as, put some money in the owner's pocket, whether it's a mom and pop business or whether you're a franchise owner, the manager, whatever. And when you take the current pay of minimum wage and you raise it by $1 or even a few dollars, I mean, yeah, for a short period of time, it's better for the workers. But the problem is, it means that as a effect of raising the minimum wage, the employer, the boss, the manager, has no choice but to either A, raise the price of what they're selling, and we'll just stick with food, okay? We'll stick with a fast food restaurant. They have to raise the price of their pizza. They have to raise the price of their burgers or their chicken or whatever they're selling in order to meet that price, in order to meet the new minimum wage. And the issue is the customer may not want to pay an extra $1 for this burger or an extra $2 for a pizza. And they may say, I'm not paying an extra $2 or an extra whatever dollars, even though by paying those extra $1, extra $2, the customer who has up until that point enjoyed eating at this restaurant, they've enjoyed the burgers, they've enjoyed the pizza, they've enjoyed the chicken, whatever. They are ensuring that the 20 employees that work at this restaurant all keep their jobs and at the same time maintain, that upper minimum wage. But as more people decide to go somewhere else or decide to do other things like, well, just go to the grocery store and start fixing more meals from home, or go to cheaper restaurants, the boss, the employer, starts looking at the numbers and they're like, okay, we're not making as much money as we were, and unfortunately that means I'm going to have to let go a certain number of my employees. So instead of having 20 employees, you may be having to cut loose 3 or 5 employees, so you're down to 15 to 17 employees. So that means that thanks to minimum wage, you have several more people, unfortunately, ending up on the unemployment line. And one of the ways that a lot of businesses are starting to combat the rise in pay is through automation, because there's more technology out there that is, coming into development, which can take orders. All you have to do is like punch in what you want at the table or at this like console at the restaurant. You say, okay, I want a double cheeseburger, I want some seasoned fries, and I want an unsweet tea. And that's all you have to do. You just punch it in. It automatically goes to the back. And then whoever's working in the back, you pay it by sliding in your card, or you put a $20 bill in there, and then it automatically gives you your change. So you don't have to deal with a cashier anymore. You don't have to deal with a teller anymore. I mean, you have a machine that does that job for you, whereas you used to have a machine. And that's another issue. Like at my bank, prime example, one of the branches of the bank I do my banking at, it used to just be like one ATM machine. Okay, so ATMs have been around for a very long time, since I think the 70s and 80s, but they become a lot more reliable, a lot more advanced, and you can do a lot more with an ATM machine now. You can even like make deposits with checks into an ATM machine. So, like it says, automatic teller machine. That's what ATM stands for. And a lot of banks, including the bank I belong to, had this brilliant idea to, instead of one ATM machine, and they had several tellers at the others. When you go through drive-through at a bank, you have like 4 or 5 like drive-through slots you go through. If you've gone to a bank, you know what I'm talking about. And you have a number of tellers inside that, you know, are interacting with the customers, whether it's a deposit or a withdrawal or whatever. But at the branch that I go to on a regular basis, there's now 3 ATM machines. 3 of them. I mean, yeah, it's convenient for the customer that just wants to go to the ATM machine, but at the same time, the effect of more ATM machines at the branch, where there was once 1 ATM machine, now there's 3 ATM machines. That means that the bank doesn't have to have as many people inside. In other words, less real tellers. And that means that some people lost their job, or if they were lucky, they got transferred to another branch. But most likely, they probably lost their job too. So automation is having a negative effect on jobs throughout the world, in factories and in banks, everywhere. So, I mean, yeah, I mean, eventually, I mean, it may get to the point where the technology, you know, works almost everybody out of a job. Not everybody, but a much larger portion of the population than is now. So, I mean, technology is wonderful. I mean, it's made life a lot better, a lot easier, especially for those in the workforce, you know, like people that work in factories, people that mow lawns. It's a lot easier to do it now with a riding lawnmower than with a push mower or with, you know, one of those old-fashioned, like, hand ones that weren't even powered. And it's made other things a lot easier, too, like farming. Farming is much easier now than it used to be, where you had to use a mule. Now you can use like a nice John Deere tractor, and there's air conditioning inside, and you have an AC radio, or, well, I mean XM radio, or just regular radio, or you can just plug in your MP3 player, listen to music while you farm all day. But there's also a downside to automation that could very well end up taking all of our jobs, and once the machines gain sentient and become AI, chances are not having a job is going to be the least of our worries.